Okay. Okay. Great. There are so many familiar faces here. Haven't seen such a long time. Yes. And between our last session and this one, I had a long journey to Delhi for 2 days, meaningless meeting, or I would say emptiness meeting. But it was nice to see so many other Buddhist brothers and sisters from Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, Mongolia, Vietnam, and also there are a few representatives from Western countries. One or two members from UK. There were 2 or 3 members from Finland, and also it is a organization set up by Indian government, and so we have to play a little bit politics because there's always politics, and the budget, the entire yearly budget was set by the Indian government, and they spend, so we have to bow down some of the points what they say. There isn't that much choice, but it was good to see. But the meeting was mainly just what they call general assembly, which is every 3 years they select they select general secretary, and there are so many secretaries and lots of votings. So you have to play lots of politics whom you are going to vote. So Dharma is not free from politics, I must say this. But it was good to see so many different traditions come together. So I had that meeting between them. And anyway, it was quite something traveling to Delhi, particularly from Sera to Bangalore, is very long journey. So the roads are good, cars are good, but because they are good, they drive extremely fast. And that caused lots of worry and concerns. So because of the topic of our discussion, and particularly returning back from Delhi, from Bangalore to here, I thought a lot, where is my eye? Which I'm grasping strongly. So anyway, that is my brief, what I've been doing. Now it's nearly 2:30 to start our class. Okay. And so my sincere greetings to everyone. And with the greetings, we will start this gathering. And as always, it is good to start with the refuge and the bodhicitta, bringing in our mind as strong as possible, as depth of our heart as possible, which is very, very important. And particularly people who join from UK or from Europe, because it is relatively morning, you may have started your morning with the refuge and the bodhicitta. And, it is, I found it's very, very good to start with these two. Either we recite the formula in English or in Tibetan or in Sanskrit or not. What is helpful and useful is really once again refresh those two minds at the beginning of the day, and also during the day, every now and then, briefly reconnect to those two minds as strong as possible, it doesn't need to be very long period, just briefly to refresh the morning, the motivation, the refuge, bodhicitta, and other positive motivation that we have set. As you know, when day activities start, then our minds become very busy, and then very often that our morning and the motivation that we have set, refuge in the bodhicitta, slowly fade away. Other minds take over. What I'm going to have breakfast? Do I had the porridge yesterday, and so on and so forth. Other minds will take over. So therefore, during the day, whenever there's a brief time, once again to refresh that, and along that, as we all know, though we may study particular subject, may read a particular book, and may do a particular practice, but I found it is very, very helpful. Every now and then, what I will use here, top up to these two minds, top up on refuge. That means, contemplate, the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. Recently, I read a nice sutra to a group mainly, I think in California, a Vietnamese group. There's a nice sutra which is called in Tibetan Bunjok Jedenti Do, recalling the three jewels, which is a sutra, not very long. That sutra, goes all the important, outstanding qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, one by one. I found it's very, very helpful. So you can in other texts to really, top up our understanding of, our understanding of the qualities of the three jewels every now and then. Also, to remind ourselves, make it deep, and deepen our understanding, our realization of the nature of this conditioning existence that we are. Sometimes, though life has lots of challenges, but there are lots of, comfortable and, everything's going well. And those days we tend to forget. We are still in, if I use that jargon, we are still in samsara. We are still under the power of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Though they may not be all the time, 24 hours a day, fully they're, what you call the alert, fully sort of functioning, but they are ready to come up, pop up, and make us to work something, not very good things for us and others. So we are still not ourselves, and our minds are not free from these three poisons and those, what you call the unhealthy, mental states. And because of that, we, face difficulties, uncertainties, fears, concerns, so on and so forth. As I just mentioned, when I was coming from Bangalore to here, the guy, the monk who was driving my car, although I keep reminding him, please drive slowly, but because of his tendency, and a young monk, and the road is very wide, and others are driving very fast, when I said, no, drive slowly, he will do 10, 15 minutes, then suddenly he is over hundreds. And then that caused me, my attachment to my life. Oh, so these uncertainties, we are not free from those. And these two are very, very helpful to top up every now and then. Then our mind taking refuge will become very strong, very strong. That's the one thing. Then, of course, bodhicitta, the altruistic awakening. Though many of us, it is not easy to have a genuine, to have a spontaneous or very genuine bodhicitta. But even if we need to mimic, even if we have to put effort to bring this mind, it is worthwhile to do that. And again, here, many of you have received many teachings from many great teachers how to enhance this altruistic awakening. Sometimes in a very gently put, good heart. And here it doesn't mean I'm not saying we don't have good heart, but still there's plenty of room to improve our good heart, to our family members, our friends, colleagues, the neighbors, and then long distance. There are so many living beings, human beings need, our sympathy, our sincere loving kindness, compassion, altruism. Sometimes, for the wider, physically, we cannot reach, but at least mentally try to express that our sincere empathy to all living beings. And that is very, very important. As His Holiness Dalai Lama says very, very often, that once we are able to, think, sincerely able to think and feel well-beings of all living beings, concerns of, well-beings of all living beings, then one's own, the difficulties, become very insignificant, very small, compared to the all. So that is very, very helpful to ourselves when we face these challenges. We all face, there's no exemption. The monks or high lamas they are not exempt as long as they are within samsara. But so that's helpful. And here top up on bodhicitta. So this is my just to remind ourselves how important and helpful to have these two minds, refuge and bodhicitta, as our main motivation, and during the day to briefly to reconnect to these two minds as often as possible. So with that, now we'll say refuge and bodhicitta minds. Sangye Chetan Sodu Chanjo Bado Tan Dage Jinso Jibe Som Dola Penje Sangye Sangye Chetan Sodu Chom Chanjo Bado Tani Dage Jinso Jibe Som Dola Penje Sangye Sangye Chetan Soji Chom Chanjo Pado Tami Dage Jenso Jibe Tsonam Dola Penje Sangye. With the refuge and the bodhicitta minds as our main motivation to join this class. Now, I will say Charasic mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. And while I'm saying the mantra, chanting the mantra, we all hold very strongly and very sincerely loving kindness and compassion. And that loving kindness, love, and compassion will express towards all sentient beings without any exclusion, and start from oneself, one's own loved ones, family members, friends, colleagues, and gradually to extend towards all living beings. And particularly living beings, human beings who are going through a very challenging, difficult times due to the natural disasters or due to the man-made disasters such as war, famine. They are, we are living in the same planet and in the same time, but there are many human beings and of course many other living beings right here and now going through a very, very challenging time. So as a human being, at least we should express our empathy, compassion, and make a deep prayer. All these challenges, difficulties, be resolved, and quickly. So those are something that we can do, and I think it is good to do. And as I mentioned in the last our class, some area, sometimes only what we can do for others, we can express our sympathy. And there are occasions we can actually, practically we can do, big or small, and that is also important to support. So here, we will hold love and compassion and express that love and compassion towards all sentient beings. So we are reading this beautiful text, Kadam teachings, and from this beautiful text, we are reading a particular chapter, chapter 6, and in Tibetan, Lenen Tamche Chigla Da, saying all the things that we face, the difficulty that we face, it is due to the one thing. It says how all blame lies in a single point, and that is what the chapter that we are reading. And as I briefly mentioned the previous the second day class, when we read these texts, sometimes we feel it is always pointing the finger only our weaknesses. The texts are not saying or revealing or praising our positive things. Sometimes when we read the text, we will feel that. But here, for example, when we read Shantideva's text, Guide to the Bodhisattvas Who Have Life, there are many, the positive things explained in the text that we human beings can do, that we human beings have potential, such as have a potential to cultivate bodhicitta. And for our case, not only potential, many of us for 20, 30, 40 years have heard from those great teachers, have read those great texts explaining the value, of the having bodhicitta. And not only explaining, but some teachers, some texts, really very clearly to introduce the technique, step by step. That's what, So our case is, very, very fortunate. Not only have potential as a human beings, our potential, in our seeds, there's already some, moisture, some, sunlight are already, shown by those great teachers. And now is our sort of responsibility. It is one of the, I think, Kadamba teachers said, it is my, so Kadamba Master, one of the Kadamba, it is, now it is up to me whether I'm going to make this life meaningful, fruitful, or not. In terms of the potential, I've got full potential. In terms of the conditions, I've got, most of the conditions to cultivate those amazing qualities. So I think that is something we should, remind ourselves, rejoice, and also, with the rejoicing, bring the strength. Of course, we have, the other tasks, other responsibilities, to look after our health, to look after our family, to look after other activities. But still, it is good to seize the opportunity. And whenever, even if there's 5-10 minutes, your mind is a little bit fresh, you have a little bit of time, just reflect on, contemplate on, or pick up a book, Dhamma book, read 1 or 2 paragraphs, refresh that. That is how, spiritual development will grow. Spiritual development will not grow everything suddenly by one action. It will grow bit by bit by bit. So that is really important to remember. Oh, yeah. So now as last time that you have seen, the nature of this chapter 6. In fact, the entire most of this book is having dialogue between Atisha and his main disciple, what you call them, Dom, having discussion between these two, and then put it down. So we are reading one of that discussion, and that is in a form of questions and answers. Though, the main question is started by Dom, who is the main disciple of Atisha, but Atisha occasionally, asks Dom, what do you think about this? And we have seen that. So, as I said at the other time, it sounds very, very, they are very, very close, master and disciple. Sounds there isn't that much, I'm sure there are lots of respect from by Dom to the Atisha, but it sounds there's no sense of fear to ask questions. And that is something useful. When we have the fear, then difficult to grow the spiritual development. And so now the briefly recap, Dom asked quite a long question. Initial question was, to explain me how we end up in this, cyclic existence, and what are those factors, 12 rings of dependent origination. And Atisha more or less said, at the moment, it's not right time to go that detail. But then Dom asked, give me a brief. And then, that is what question. In that case, what is the root of bondage? What is the root of our difficulties? That is the question asked by Dom. And then Atisha answer was, it is the grasping at self. So it is the grasping, at the self. And, it didn't say the self. It didn't say something other. It says it is grasping at the self. And that is quite important, for us gradually to digest. Sometimes, we, not just sometimes, it is very, very difficult to really to get, our particular mental states, how this particular mind functions. And when it functions, what are the conditions? Sometimes very difficult to dismantle, to unwrap bit by bit function of the mind itself, where that mind, under what circumstances that mind arises. When it arises, what is the main that mind is grasping on, and so on and so forth. That is something here. So it says it is the grasping at self, and that is Atisha's, the answer. Okay, I'm going to put on my ear, otherwise it's going to be very, very noisy, difficult to concentrate. Being the school just under my window, there are many positive things, and there are also many difficult things. The positive things are to see these young boys, age 6, 7, 8, and majority are in that age, to see them playing and jumping and chasing each other, to see that energy. And negative or painful thing is, to give them good education. And that is the difficult, one person cannot do anything, can guide, can show the direction, then it is up to many people, teachers, administrators, and the same as in the lay community, the parents take big role But here, it's very, very difficult. We don't have the parents here. So these young boys, they have to, their teachers in their individual houses, they have a teacher. And then to let the teachers know how they are doing and their health. And then sometimes very, very, frustrating. Anyway. So that is here, the Atisha's answer. It is the self-grasping. And then Drom asks, what is that self-grasping? What is this grasping at self? And then Atisha's first answer was a very practical, very experiential answer, not very deep philosophical answer. Here it says, this is something that wants all positive qualities for oneself. And that is really important for us in our daily life. Of course, we all deserve to have positive things. And we all, don't want negative things. That is by nature. But, our that yearning, wanting positive things to ourselves, and it very often excludes others in that yearning. And that is the problem. That is what here it is saying, something of, self-grasping. Qualities of oneself alone, and that word is important, oneself alone. And many of us may not think, I don't think it. But as I mentioned, I gave you several examples, my own experiences. Many of our current good qualities are culturally conditioned. Environmentally conditioned, and not from our depth. We have this, and that is something important. This word alone, and what Atisha is saying, that is the sign of, grasping at the self. We all have this grasping at self. Look at how we react. That is important. And just recap. Then Dom asks, push a little bit further. It says, please explain this in such manner so you can say this is self-grasping. And then the Atisha's answer was, this is the rarefied self-grasping. And I've mentioned, briefly put it this, a rarefied self-grasping. A rarefied, in a simple term, exaggerated, on self. Exaggerated. The sort of added on more qualities on self. And then believing that is self, that should be protected, that should be served, that should be feed, and that is what here. And very often in the Buddhist term, there's a particular term which is, I think many of you have known this. I'm sure you know this. In more than 2,000 years ago, some of those great Buddhists as well as non-Buddhist Indian philosophers, sometimes they call, I or the self. Instead of I or self, in Tibetan, it's called sabo. Sabo, that means consumer. One. That is what quite often term is used. Sabo, sawabo. And literally it means eater. Then quite often those great translators translate saying the consumer. There is within us, there's this want more. And I've given several examples from my own experiences. And now, maybe a few months or a year, I have to clear all this long cupboard of my collection of nearly 6 years, which I did when I was leaving UK. And that is sign of consuming. Not necessarily use everything, but collect. And that is what here, as it is the sign of this, verified self-grasping, verified in the sense, added certain qualities on the self, and then believing that is self, and that need to be protected, that need to be all those things. And so these are some of the important points which we need to recap. And now I'm going to little bit more today's reading. Otherwise, we may not finish this text tomorrow. So I'm going to do. Now then, another important question was asked by by Drom. Where does this self-grasping reside? Where is it? Where is this self-grasping reside? Abide, and that is important. And where does this? And in that context, which I mentioned the last our weekend class. Now here it is important to remind ourselves, the self-grasping, or here the term is self-grasping, and the object of the self-grasping and the object of the self-grasping. And that is important to bring here. I mentioned the other weekend. Now, what is the object of self-grasping? And that is here lots of, what you call the explanation, and lots of analysis are needed to understand what is the object of self-grasping. And here I want to add it on a little bit, which I didn't say deliberately. I thought you may feel very, I won't say depression, or you may feel very disappointed. So it is said by those experiential meditators. For until we gain certain levels of understanding of emptiness of self, until we gain certain levels of, we gain understanding of emptiness at certain levels, we are unable to differentiate what is exaggerated on the self and what is that self. Very, very difficult to differentiate, to separate, what we exaggerate on self. And that is something important to remember. Therefore, there are certain meditation, particularly in this meditation on emptiness of self. Certain methods are taught, saying initially when you meditate, when you analyze, when you search, analyze the self, the I, whatever that appears to us, there is I will go with this question. There were two questions I received. One question, the person who asked that question, he or she says, when he meditates the self, it appears a letter I, that is the letter I, very solid, not connected to mind and body. That will happen when we start to analyze what is self, is here, what is I, is here. Lots of things will occur. That is the nature of the analysis, particularly in the early stage. And here what I'm saying, my main point here is, in the early stage, this particular meditation, strand of meditation is said, in the early stage, whatever appeared to you in your meditation as an I, as a self, just to reject, saying, this is not self, this is not I. When I say I or self in this case, I'm not saying exaggerated I, I'm not saying, added quality I, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, this is not I, this is not self, whatever it occurs in the analysis. In that case, we may feel very, very frightening. If this is not I, if that is not I, if this occurs to be not I, then, what's going to happen when my last breathing stops? That fear will occur. That fear will occur. That fear will occur. But here is a technique to really do the analysis, to understand what is self and what is that I exaggerate quality, that I exaggerate on self. And that is here, and the particular technique. What is said is, initially when you reject, and if we continue to this, on this line to do the meditation, eventually, what is there as a self will remain, will not disappear, will stay there. Even though I reject, no, this is not self, this is not I, this is not going to go to next line, this is not what, what you call come from previous line when we reject at the meditation. When our analysis on emptiness of the self slowly pick up, then what is there as a self will remain, because it is fact that cannot be, mentally cannot be rejected. So that is something important. So which I haven't said this last time because I thought it might be too much information at that stage. Now, what I said last time, which we will come down later, also we had read one or two lines last time, in the Buddhist text, sometimes self-grasping and the object of the self-grasping come together and they explain as if self-grasping does not exist. When explanation continue, it seems it is saying, text is saying, or teacher is saying, self-grasping does not exist. That's the case. Self-grasping does exist. That is the mind. That is the distorted mind. That does exist. What does not exist is what is exaggerated on self by this self-grasping. That does not exist. And these two should be differentiated. And that differentiation will come not very obviously, just for one or two meditations or one or two, the analytical. It will come in a much, much later. As I said, some teachers have said, until the practitioner may understanding of emptiness of the self reach at certain level, it is very, very difficult to differentiate what is self is there and what are the qualities exaggerated on that. So that is one. I just want to say this because here now we are coming towards this. Where does this self-grasping reside? In quiet Drom. It is devoid of parts. So now saying it is devoid by parts, it is not referring, it is mainly referring, it is devoid, devoid of parts. It sounds, it is referring to the self-grasping. In fact, it is not referring that it is not referring to the self-grasping. It is referring to the object of the self-grasping. And it is object of the self-grasping, not just the self, what is added on the object of the self-grasping. And that is important to, it is devoid of parts, and I have never seen it myself. And that is the important. I've never seen it by myself. I've never seen it myself. There's nothing, and abides where there is nowhere to abide. So, exaggerated self-grasp, our self-grasping, exaggerated on the self, that is, not exist. That is not abide in here. That hasn't got any color, any shape, any form, referring to that. So it will take a little bit time, particularly people who are relatively new. It will take a little bit time, but it will when you meditate on, and then next question, which is important one, which Tom asked, which I'll now then that will join to our today's reading, is this. Tom asked, if it is so, how can something so fearful exist? So that is, important one. The fearful in the sense, very weak, very sort of unsubstantial, very, there's nothing there. It is just simply exaggerated on that, on the self. How that can cause huge trouble. How that can cause huge trouble, though it is just mentally exaggerated on the self. Why it causes huge trouble? Why that has the ability to keep us in this conditioning existence? And that question is very helpful question, important question that Drom asked. And then the Atisha's answer is, Drom asked. Atisha responded, cannot one perceive mirage water, a double moon, dream horse and elephants, and so on? So we finish our reading up to there. So now here what we can see, it is clearly Atisha is responding. Our distorted mind will cause lots of trouble. Even though distorted mind itself is very feeble, very weak, not very, there's no solid reasons, there's no valid reasons. It is very, very distorted. These are very, very distorted mental state, but it causes problem. For example, when you have a good dream, positive dream, during that period, there's a lot of joy. If you have a nightmare during that period, there's lots of pain, lots of fear. Though it is just dream. And that is what here Atisha. So that is something very useful for us in even our daily life. in our daily life. Of course, many of our challenges, difficulties are very much physical, very tangible. But many of our other difficulties are very much mentally, created. Many of our fears, many of our worries, concerns, uncertainties, these are very much created by our mind. Not that much there as a fact. Of course, there are physical things there, shortage of food, shortage of security, shortage of support, shortage of, so on and so forth. These are also facts. But, our same time, like a parallel, many of our challenges are very much mental. And these mental states, that cause us difficulties, they are very much, in a form of either exaggerated on the fact or denying on the fact. And between those two, what the Buddhist term is used, the Bhagavad Gita in Tibetan, Bhagavad Gita. Now my English is rusted. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I like this. So then, now to our today's reading, now just remind ourselves, yes, it is distorted mental state. It is very feeble mental state, very weak mental state, but it has an ability to cause trouble. And Atisha gave us these examples, the mirage, double moon, dream, and those are our own experiences. We can tell, though these are very, weak mental states, particularly dream, even if you have a very nice dream, while we're having that dream, suddenly dogs barking, then that will completely gone. So very, very weak, and so forth. But that is here. Now, Master, these are delusions. So that's today's our reading. We are starting. These are delusions. So these are refers to the dreams and so forth. These are delusions. So our reading, Atisha said, I accept this to be so. It is not that he, okay, now, Miku, Chöshene, Ko Teshedo, Danzin, Ko Yunes. So then Atisha said, yes, I accept that. These are delusions. So do the self-grasping. So do the self-grasping. Self-grasping is also delusion. So for many of us, difficult to understand how the self-grasping is distorted mental state. Delusion in the sense distorted. Very, very difficult to see the self-grasping as a distorted. Maybe in a very gross form, some of the, from the Buddhist point of view, some of those non-Buddhist ancient Indian philosophical schools, a version of self, we may say, permanent, unchanging. Some of those we may say, that is delusion or that is distortion. But very difficult to understand what we are pointing out here, the self-grasping, as a distorted mental state. Very, very difficult. So here, Atisha, the Cho Te Tunangla Me Shube, Cho Shene, Ko Te Shedo. So when, respond, I will also accept that. Self-grasping, yuna, okay. Danzin yuna, chakdang, yune, chakdang, cheba, mai. Okay. Now, This is very, very interesting one, which I'll read in English, but then I will explain in Tibetan. It says this: it is not that he, self-grasping, indulges in attachment and aversion on the basis of being existent. So on the basis of being existent, in the sense, not saying self-grasping, what is exaggerated by the self-grasping. That is what here it is important one. And the next one is, which is then from there, it was dogs bark in the wilderness because of an empty container. That is very, very nice expression, which I will explain. So when the dogs are hungry and dogs, where the foods are, containers, dogs' food containers are empty, then even if there's a very small, tiny noise, the dogs will bark very, very, loudly. And that is what in Tibetan, shongpa is the container where they feed dogs. And when the containers are empty, and then the dogs are very, very agitated, easy to bark. What he's saying here is, that when our self-grasping exaggerate on the self, then it is very, very, it is not because self exists or what is exaggerated is exist, but our mind is very much exaggerated on the self. That causes other troubles, attachment and aversion. Attachment and aversion is, led by this self-grasping, not because the object of the self-grasping is there, or not because what is exaggerated on the object of the self-grasping is there, but simply because of the distorted mind. Like the dogs are simply very hungry, the containers are empty, and they simply did the bark. Barking is just simply that. And this expression, I don't know whether you get in English nicely or not, I don't know. In Tibetan, this expression is very, very nice expression. In English, it says, dogs bark in the wilderness, in the sense, in the empty space, because of an empty container where, because they are hungry, so they bark. And so that analogy is talking about, not because what is exaggerated is there, therefore there's attachment or there's anger due to the self-grasping. It is because of the just simply distortions, then attachment and anger follows. And that is what here. This analogy is a very, very important one. So container. And our mind stream, is greatly perturbed with no ground at all. So that is, our mind is very much, it says our mind stream is greatly perturbed. In other words, perturbed or distorted or diluted, with no ground at all. With no ground at all. That is important one. What is that with no ground at all? What we are self-grasping, exaggerate on self, that is what he is saying, no ground at all. That exaggeration is not there. Okay, now I think you may have fed up. I keep saying exaggerated, but I haven't said a single word what is exaggerated. And that is I did deliberately to you to feel annoyed, to feel now if I say, oh, what is exaggerate? Now, what is exaggerate? In the Buddhist text, there are several different steps. Buddhist masters have, through their analysis, they have found different Buddhist masters. They have found, different layers of exaggerations by our self-grasping on ourselves. That is important. By our self-grasping on ourselves, layers of exaggeration there. So for us, because we don't have that much luxury, go through all these, what Buddhist master have, particularly Nagarjuna and some of his followers, have said, what we exaggerate on ourselves, as the other day, the term that I use, and that term now it is important to bring here, our exaggeration is in this way, in this manner. Our self-grasping exaggerate on ourselves that self exists in and of itself. That is the exaggeration. We did a fast track, not going all the different those stages, just go to the fast track. But it is, as I mentioned earlier, to see, to get that, exaggerated part is not easy. But it can be undone, it can be, undone, but it will take time. Need lots of analysis. Lots of analysis. There are some Vajrayana teachings, and some Vajrayana higher teachings can be done in a different ways. But in the Sutrayana, it is the way through the analyzing. Really day by day analyzing, as I mentioned earlier. How our self-grasping, exaggerate on self, that self exists in and of itself. That is the way, how. Now, therefore, in that process of analysis, then the later part of the text is very much, in the passion of meditation, like similar to Heart Sutra. Similar to Heart Sutra. No form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compensational factors, no consciousness. No ear, no nose, no tongue, no body. That is here the analysis. In the Heart Sutra, as you know, it started from the form. The analysis started from the form to go all the way up to the full enlightenment. Analysis go all the way. It didn't end up. Analysis, should not end up just in the samsaric things. It is also analysis. Also should be done all the way up to impact. So that is here something useful to remember. So I'm using just one. I don't know if that's the right English or not. In Tibetan, it says Rangune Tuba. Rangune Tuba. Rang, its own right. Tuba. So in and of itself. That our current perception of self, our current how we believe self or I go from here to have a tea, I go from here to next year, I go from here to next life, I came from yesterday, I eat this, how we perceive that these great masters, people who haven't realized emptiness, they perceive that exists in and of itself. In other words, very, very independent, not dependent. Even if we see a little bit dependent on mind and the body, but still we have a perception. It can survive. It can stand by itself without this mind, body. So that is here, which is important. So what is exaggerated? Now we are discussing about what is exaggerated by our mind, if we use very precisely, that by the self-grasping on ourself. And that is, which I earlier used, exaggerated qualities, added on qualities. That's what here. So remember that, which is very, very, helpful to do the analytical meditations. Now I'm going to read a little bit further. Perturbed with no ground at all. Perturbed, Master, if such are the examples, self-grasping seems to be something that never existed at all. So now that is another one. The term expression that I mentioned earlier. Sometimes Buddhist texts that these teachers, when they teach, sometimes what in English word conflate, or to go not making very precisely the self-grasping and the object self-grasping. These two need to be made very clear. But here the asked question by Dom Master, if such are the examples that which I said earlier, dogs barks in the wilderness because of the empty container and so on and so forth, then Master, if such are the examples, self-grasping seems to be something that never existed at all, Dom said. Then what is this thing that seems to be? It must be real. Just listen to that word. It says like this. What is this thing that seems to be real? It must be real. So, for us, our current level, our mind perceive how, our I or the self in that distorted manner from its own right, from its own side, exist from its own right. Here what he's saying, the Dom use, Master, in that case, a Master is this thing that seems to be, it must be real, and seems to be that Atisha catches that expression, and Atisha's answers, Master, in that case, seems to be, and that must be, it must be real. It must be real. It must be real in the sense, when we, for example, perceive our I, and after that perception, then we do lots of activities, lots of activities. I need this. I don't need this. I want this. I don't. As I used earlier, that particular term, consumption, consumer. That through that we do all. So it seems to be real. Seems to be real. It must be real. And then, now from here, then more, I would say the more important question for us, as I mentioned earlier, if there is no, I or the self, then who is going to go next day? Who is going to go next line? And that answer, having good answer to that question is very, very important. Important in the sense when we are analyzing the final nature of I, or another term is ultimate nature of I, self. In these process of analysis, there is a risk. We may reach a stage, we may reach a point thinking there's no I, there's no self. And in that case, then our analysis is going too far. For us, for the practitioner, it's going too far. So now this next question, next part of this, what we are going to read today is to bring to the middle way, And that is important one. And as you know, many of you have studied. When you say reality, there are two types of reality, conventional reality and ultimate reality. Don't think reality is only ultimate reality. There's a conventional reality. There's a conventional truth and ultimate truth. Though very, very helpful, useful to understand the ultimate truth, but should not neglect the conventional truth. Because conventional truth will bite. If we neglect conventional truth, then that will bite us in our everyday life. And that is very, very painful. That's what here. Now, the next part of the reading, it is, okay, I'm going to look at a little bit more time. Okay, a little bit time. I'm just going to read this next one. It must be real. So if, how we perceive our eye, how we perceive our eye, something real, something, what you call in and of itself. And that is our reading. Then, Master, in that case, do the forms and the functions of the abyss of the three realms, three lower realms, and the qualities of the higher realms, and the ethical norms of the affirmation and rejection also exist. Now, that is here. It is the question is, if it is real, or if it is not real, then what's going to happen? If, my perception, how I perceive I, if that I is not real, then how about, the unfortunate rebirths? How about those fortunate rebirths? How about those good qualities of those great teachers, great Buddhas? Are they real, or not? And that is the question, which is important question, because as I said, there is this good balance is important. Conventional truth and ultimate truth. While it is important to understand the ultimate reality or the ultimate truth of the I, same time we should not neglect conventional nature of the I, conventional reality of the I. And that is, don't ask what is that conventional nature of I. I will not going to say today, because many of you know, and I want to leave a little bit tomorrow, and that's what I'm going to do that tomorrow. What is that conventional nature of the I? And that jargon you have heard many times. So therefore, I'm not going to throw that jargon today. I'm going to do that tomorrow. But today I have just explained what is exaggeration on ourselves by our self-grasping. That is really important one. And it will only understand through our own analysis, through our own experiences, not by, just saying. There's nothing to say more than what you have heard from those great teachers on that issue, on that subject. What is here is we need to bring down to our own experiential level through the analytical meditation. Okay? So today I will leave with our reading here, but before we leave, I want to address, though there are two questions, I want to say a little bit on those two questions, and then we will stop here. So the first question, which I mentioned earlier, I briefly touch on to say that it says, it feels like there are two types of appearance and I that appears to show to somehow encompass the body and mind. That's the one, like a person or personality, or the mere I, just the I alone, not sense of a connected body and mind. So here, as I mentioned earlier, it is very much, process. We need to go through the process by the analysis. At this stage, whichever it occurs, let it occur. And more we do analysis, eventually it will form, and this great master has said, it will form some kind of, what in English, summary in the sense, frequently, in your analytical meditation, there is a frequent appearance of I, either connected with the body or personality, or very independent. Then you have to again analyze on that frequently occurring, that this occurring of I. When you get there, then analyze again with that, whether that really, how that frequently occurring I exists. And currently, as you are right, very difficult to, for me, very difficult to get a conclusion in my meditation when I analyze my perception of I perceive my I in this form very frequently, because, I don't do that kind of meditation very frequently, so difficult. But if you do meditation frequently, then we'll see a pattern of how we perceive our I. In that perception, then we got the target, then is this I? That is the point. Currently, in my case, don't have the target. If there's no target, you can't say, you can't shoot the, arrow. Need to find target. How we find the target? Through the analysis. Eventually, we'll get some notion of I. My mind perceive I in this fashion. Though Master have said, in and of itself, independent, whatever, I perceive in this fashion. And now, is this I? Is I exist in that way? And that is the important. So I will go with that. And there's another question. In the third aspect of self-grasping, the one explaining that we add a mistaken view of self as existing in and of itself, which I mentioned, is it the same mind that, for example, decides to label or okay. Now the main point here is two things. The first question is, when we say I'm Tibetan, I'm English, I'm German, in that process, the process of verbally saying and mentally thinking, yesterday, one of the main debating points in the evening is how the language, verbal, and the thought, how these two, how closely these two go together. Which one occurs first? Thought of I, or the verbally saying I? Which one comes first? And the different Buddhist masters have different. So here when you say it is useful when you say I'm depressed, or I'm Tibetan, I am depressed. Sometimes it's quite good to say that word and see, to feel, to experience that I which is depressed. Just try to find out that. Is it, finger pointable, that depressed I? It is catchable, that depressed I? Quite useful to do. And also, our verbal expression creates lots of thought patterns. And that is really something useful to think about. Maybe there's another question. When within the 5 parts of the practitioners with a greater capacity and instead them and heart are able to sustain that. Okay, so it is the how sustainable our Dharma growth, like the bodhicitta, like the realization of emptiness. It is said, although I don't have the experience, but the great masters have said, it is said, when these realizations, like the bodhicitta, like the wisdom realizing emptiness, reach at a certain stage in the sense, stage where these realizations don't need any repression. They occur very spontaneously. The term is, in Tibetan, it is called, the two terms are used, rangshin. Rangshin in the sense very natural, very spontaneously, effortlessly. Another term is, when our realizations are reach at that level, then there will not deteriorate. That is what it said. But I don't know, when we passed away, next life, whether I have to go to this school or not, I don't know. All those high lamas, when they come back, they have to go through these very painful trainings. I don't know. No, I'm in that stage. And so that is the one question. At the more basic level, what practices help one reach the capacity to inspire one's mind based on their teacher, but not necessarily based on regular classes? Yes, I think it is very, as I mentioned earlier, recollecting or recalling the qualities of the Buddha, qualities of the Dharma, qualities of the Sangha itself is very, very helpful. The not going to class. That will help. I think it seems that is the question, but not necessarily based on regular classes. I think whoever asked this question fed up going to regular classes. Anyway, so it is useful. Really, it is useful to reflect on the qualities of the teachers, like the Buddha, like currently His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and other teachers. Reflect on qualities of their qualities. It will inspire, give us great inspiration, or lead us to do the same. But anyway, so I'll go more. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I will see you tomorrow. Now we'll end with the Tono Tara prayers and dedication. Mm-hmm. Om Je Pama Droma Changze Droma Nyum Pa Chene Geje Lo Dang Cha Jiden Sunggun Chuje She Kesara Chewa Len Jung Changze Dongge Dawa Kangwa Yen Zingbe She Kama Dongda Choba Nama Rado Chewe Rabaram Changze Singmu Chuni Beme Changye Nambara Je Jimba Zudu Kadu She Saba Samdin Juni Changze Tishin Shebe To Taye Nambara Jawa Ju Malu Paro Jimba To Dewe Seji Shindu Changze Doda Rang Yi Doda Choda Nanga Kam Jigden Dombo Shadin Luba Meba Guba Changze Jajin Mela Zang Nongla Na So Wanju Che Chombo Rola Jisa Nama Nijun Soye Dunin Changze Jeje Chadang Te Paro Chobo Rabu Yegon Yenjang Shapin Meba Choba Shindo Changze Dure Jiba Chen Didi Bao Nambara Chun Chuje Shen Tong Chao Tamje Malu Se Changze Kunjo Somzen Cha Seme Toga Nambara Ge Malu Choje Polo Je Rangi Veji Sonam Chu Changze Rado Gawa Je Wojin Veji Chengwa De Sheba Rashi Duda Ra Duda Jigden Wando Zem Changze Sashi Dongwe So Tamje Guba Nyum Choni Yewa Yige Hongba Tamje Nambara De Changze Dare Dongwe Yamba Tamje Chindo Lebe Choni Roba Tabara Shindo Changze Gebe Tamami Barwe Tingwe Win Ye Jang Yung Gum Kune Ko Daye Pune Nambara Chung Changze Sashi Mala Cha Tilgi Nujing Shabi Choni Jenze Yige Rimba Dumbo Namnege Changze Dema Shi Nyangen Deshin Chun Sowa Omda Yangda De Diba Chenbo Jomani Changze Kune Korowa Daye Luni Nambara Gen Yege Chube Ngani Kun Riba Honghe Dwamani Changze Turi Shamni Da Honghe Name Sabuni Rera Menda Radambi Jigden Sumna Yewani Changze Haye Tsoyin Rida Dajin Chanami Dara Niju Peji Dena Malu Panin Sam, Chanzel Hai Tonum Dem, Hada Miang Ji Den, Gwene Goja Kawa Ji, Zeda Melama Nyemba Sam, Chanze Nima Tawa Dem, Jini Bola Rab Sam, Hara Niju Dudara, Shindo Chabu Rinne Sam, Chanze Tini Sumnam Dem, Shewe Tudang Yang Da Den, De Dang Rama Nijun Song, Chomba Dure Ra Choni, Zawe Nga Di De Ba Di, Changze Wang Yawa Di Jiu, Sanama Yeshe Chong Dong Shin, Sanama Yeshe Le Chong, Tamba Kunin Fong, Tangjo Sencho Rinpoche, Ma Je Ban Ma Je, Ewa Nyamba Meba, Kone Kongdo, Hare Rave Kone Shinga, Pendan De Ma Je, Chere Se, Tenzin Dade, Shabe Sede Bade, Tengu. Oh yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.